2. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of On the Range Podcast with War HOGG Tactical and Kelley Defense. I am Mark Kelley from KelleyDefense.com, and joined with me, as always, is my good friend Rick Hogg from warhogg.com. How's it going today, buddy?
Man, it's going great, Mark. I want to thank the NRA for inviting us out to the annual conference here at Atlanta. Super excited about today's guests. So we got Glen Hoyer from the NRA Law Enforcement Division. So, Glen, welcome to the show. Appreciate all you're doing to keep our officers safe out there.
Well, thank you very much. It's our pleasure to be here. Glad to be invited.
Yeah. You guys, I mean, this whole Voice of the Second is a big movement, I know, for the NRA, kind of shifting to get some more platforms out there to kind of spread the message. We all know that our freedom of speech is being suppressed all the time, but want to thank you guys for the invite, but really kind of deep dive into, hey, what does the NRA have going on as far as their law enforcement division? I think as we were talking pre-production, the cop shop.
I like that.
How that works, just to educate our law enforcement officers out there, hey, if they're looking for some additional training, what the NRA offers, and what you guys are doing to help keep them safe.
Well, we're glad you could be here. The NRA has a long-standing tradition of being very pro-law enforcement. We have an awful lot of board members that are either active or retired law enforcement. We, of course, have our staff in the law enforcement division that's retired law enforcement. Some of our part-time staff are instructors or even still full-time. But the NRA has that long history of backing the blue. And the NRA Law Enforcement Division actually got its start in 1960 when the NRA realized we have to do more for law enforcement. Law enforcement training seems to be suffering. Agencies would have an officer graduate from their academy. They've qualified. They're good to go. That was the mindset. And the NRA realized that, well, they need additional training, continuing training, and better training. So the division, as it is today, started with a program within the Education and Training Division of NRA. So it was basically a small department within the Education and Training geared towards helping law enforcement get training, not providing it, but certifying training they had received, certifying firearms instructors that received outside training, look at what the training they went through, if it met the standard, blessing them as a NRA firearms instructor. Then in 1962, the board of directors realized that we have to do more. Can we get law enforcement officers interested in competition? Because if they become a competitor, they're essentially training on their own. Mm-hmm. So we began with the National Police Revolver Championship in 1962, which then later morphed into the National Police Shooting Championship. So we looked at various different ways, but as the program grew in training, in the mid-1970s, we realized this is too much for a small program within the Education and Training Department. It needs to be its own entity. So that's when the division itself became formed with mainly the training department and, of course, competitions department. But then it blossomed. So 1975, we really got our legs under us and started to move and started providing training directly, not just certifying training other officers had been through as an instructor. So that takes us to today, where our law enforcement firearm instructor development training is some of the best in the country. And we have 7 different disciplines, from a handgun, shotgun, rifle or patrol rifle, precision rifle, which is long-distance scoped. You also have a tactical shotgun. You also have select fire, which is full auto, and then a tactical shotgun, which I had just briefly mentioned, a handgun shotgun. This is a separate tactical shotgun, and then a tactical shooting, which is geared more towards an experienced instructor looking to learn more about how to build range drills, etc. Mm-hmm. So when an officer comes to our training, which it is a tuition fee training, we do have some of the least expensive training tuition available, and it's a full 5 days, 44-plus contact hours. This training is conducted by our employees. It's not that you would go to a counselor or someone else. It will be taught by an NRA employee, a seasoned law enforcement firearms instructor. The curriculum's developed in-house, training aids, etc. Everything's put together in-house. So we've come a long way from 1960 to where we're at today in 2025. Certifications for any of the disciplines are good for 3 years. We do require continuing education to renew, to show that you didn't get certified and then stop learning. You want to keep learning, and your recertification is time that you spent as a student, not time you spent instructing, because it's easy to get into the fold of, well, I deliver all this training, what could I possibly learn? Well, nothing could be worse said.
Oh, yeah.
You can always learn. A lot of times we've had very seasoned instructors come to us for the first time, and they're like, wow, I can't believe I got to go through 5 days of training to become an instructor. I've been an instructor through my department or my state for all this time. And at the end they go, wow, you showed us a lot of things we didn't know, and at the same time we got a lot of refresher, some of the basic principles, because, we went back to it and went, yeah, that's a good way to train it. We just forgot about it.
Yeah.
So we offer a very wide variety of our training. Again, it is conducted by our employees.
And one thing I want to add is, so I took a couple of your courses back in the 90s. What I learned back then, we're still employing today. A couple key facts. So we just kind of got our new War HOGG target built. A couple takeaways from NRA Law Enforcement firearms instructor course. Number one, versus just having a standard black silhouette. I took your old 90s face picture, if you remember that one. They had the old, we stuck that on there. And then the other part that was a takeaway from you guys is putting some type of firearm on that target. So now you have a threat on there.
And for what the viewers may be wondering, it's a standard silhouette, but to make it look more realistic, it is basically a printed or photocopied face to put a real person there. And then you have basic threats to which you can put in a hand or in the area. This is not only used to give it a more realistic feel, but it also helps you with shoot, don't shoot decision-making scenarios. And there he is.
So
he's risen.
That is not me.
Yeah. So as people like to say, old gaucho there. And that is, as you know, from the 90s, that on our new War HOGG target. You pan down to the bottom. He's got his pistol on there.
It's a very, very easy way, especially to train decision-making shooting, shoot, don't shoot.
Absolutely.
You have turning targets. You may actually have a photocopy, and it's easy enough to do. Take a picture, run it through a photocopy. Could be an off-duty or undercover officer holding up his credentials and a badge. So the target turns, and you may see a gun on one side, but credentials on another. Clearly a no-shoot target. So it goes a long way towards making it authentic and realistic.
Absolutely.
And to challenge the student.
And on that, one other takeaway that has been huge for us is the T-shirt drill. So actually taking a T-shirt, putting it over the target. So now I'm adding realism.
You're adding realism, and you're taking away any scoring rings that students happen to look for.
Well, we'll get into scoring rings in a second, because we'll hit on the B-27, and we wonder why we have dramas in law enforcement. We'll pause there, because on our target as well, if you saw in there, we had vitals. So to me, I want officers to understand anatomy, physiology of the human body. God forbid they're in that deadly force encounter. Hey, I'm putting shots where they need to go. Not on a B-27, and we wonder why we're gut shooting all these people. It's because we're setting our officers up for failure with that.
And that's a problem with competitions. For those viewers out there who are not familiar with the B-27, it was designed a long time ago after the original Colt target, which is always the guy drawing the firearm on the side. And even if you hit, the arm or something, it was still a good hit, versus the current targets don't have appendages on them. Now, that's not stopping the threat generally when you hit someone in the arm. So we want to teach center mass. And a lot of times civilians will go, well, why don't you shoot them in the leg and disable them? Well, shooting them in the leg may make them stop, but if they have a firearm in their hand or a grenade or whatever they could have, they're still a threat. And the most logical way to stop the threat against you, the officer, or protecting a civilian, is you have to hit an area most likely to stop the threat, which is the torso area. And the only statistic we've ever had to operate from comes from back, I want to say in the late 70s, early 80s, a survey was done that found that only about 25% of the rounds fired by law enforcement actually hit their intended target. That's dismal.
Yeah.
And so, again, that's the only thing we have to base on. I am not aware of any new studies. But when you figure 1 in 4 rounds fired by law enforcement hits the intended target, that's not good, because where are the other rounds going?
Exactly.
And it doesn't stop the threat. So the more we focus on center mass, and of course, as you know, as a trainer, the target, it faces you, it's squared away. You don't always get that luxury. As I've told some trainers coming up, they said, well, you know, on the range, you must take this stance, you must punch out, you must do this. And I'll say, do me a favor, go on YouTube or one of the other channels like that and just look up some of the in-car cameras of traffic stops that have gone bad. And what is your number one stance you'll see the officer in? It's usually this, pointing at the car while trying to seek cover.
Yeah.
And what are you shooting at? A bad guy who maybe turned like this. You know, you don't get that luxury of full on. But for training purposes, it's what we work with.
It is, and you bring up a great point, is kind of changing that mindset of the instructor to go versus do exactly what I say. Here's some framework I'm looking at. Because you don't know that officers, you know, injuries, ickies, owies, hey, do this, do that. Does the hand size fit? You look at a lot of these officers, especially from the female side, they're carrying some big guns.
Yes.
And you're trying to get them to get a proper grip, and they're struggling just because their hands cannot fit around that handgun properly. And these agencies aren't doing anything to try to help.
Yeah.
And it's just like, as long as you called, you checked the block, the liability's off the agency, and they just let the officer go.
And that's a problem. Training for liability, not for success.
For survival.
Exactly. And if you survive it, you're successful, hopefully with no injury, but a lot of times the officer is injured, which comes back to the agency training. My agency did extensive training with wounded officer malfunction clearing drills. You know, how are you going to reload? How are you going to cycle a slide? How are you going to clear a malfunction? Make them do it support hand, strong hand, whichever, just to get them thinking, just because I'm shot, I'm not down and out.
Yeah.
I got to finish this fight. I got to win. And you have to teach them those things, not just check the liability box. They've qualified, I'm done. No, that is the problem we have today. And a lot of times it is lack of funding. You don't have the time to spend on the range to teach different scenarios, decision-making, malfunction clearing, to actually get their skill level up to what it should be.
Yeah.
A lot of agencies through the years have reduced shooting from 25 yards and move it in because it's easier to qualify. And the number one fallacy that I hear spoken, well, according to the FBI's UCR statistics, most law enforcement encounters of deadly force are 3 feet and in. No, that's not correct at all. If you look at the FBI's UCR, Uniform Crime Report of officers killed and injured in the line of duty, that 3 feet and in, that whole statistics that the FBI puts together, and they do a great job of it, those are all the gunfights we've lost. They do not calculate in ones the law enforcement has won. So you start looking at it, and the first thing you realize from the FBI UCR is distance is your friend. It doesn't take much training if you're the bad guy, you approach me, and we have a gunfight, for you to punch a gun out and shoot me at this distance.
Yep.
You don't really need training.
Yeah.
But the more the distance increases, the more my training as a law enforcement officer comes the skill-based that I can end this encounter. And the further away from you I am, the more likely you are to miss. So distance is your friend. If you're cutting down the distance to which you're qualifying and training your officers, you're doing a huge disservice.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great point. And it's not only that. I think, and Rick and I say this all the time, it seems like they are training to pass the qual more so than the proficiency, because they're two entirely different things.
Absolutely.
And funding, you know, manpower and all these things, getting these folks through, I get it, they got to check those boxes. What's the relationship been with like state entities that govern all those law enforcement agencies. What's that been with the NRA? Because a lot of good stuff does come out of the NRA. It has been for several decades.
Yeah, we get all types of law enforcement firearms instructors through our training. It could be the small department with 5 or 6 officers. It could be a mid-sized department. My agency was hundreds of officers. But as it gets bigger, some of them do a great job. Look at like LAPD. You seldom hear of an LAPD officer in a gunfight where the bad guy wasn't taken down. And usually, and hopefully, the officer's in good condition and survives. But then look at some other large agencies. They'll fire all these rounds in a gunfight and didn't hit the bad guy. He just ran out of ammo and surrenders.
Yeah, right.
So we offer a lot, and we try to influence as best we can, good training standards and tactics, etc. And sometimes the states will adopt them, sometimes not. Usually on a state post police officer standards and training, it's kind of like a building code. When a builder builds your house, they build it to the building code. They go, oh, this meets code. That's the lowest common denominator to which, it gets approved to be a home. Post-training is like that also. Most departments want to exceed post-training because they know that they need to, but a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
So.
Are you seeing a big shift out there in law enforcement as far as to red dot pistols?
I prefer to call them pistol-mounted optics.
Okay.
Because one is red dot's a misnomer. I have several and they're green. And, of course, there's other ones, different colors. So I prefer to handgun-mounted optics.
Okay.
That being said, the answer is absolutely 100% yes. And it is making a very positive difference. We have taken some of our curriculum involving the handgun, and we've added sections on handgun optics for that purpose. And we're developing some additional training as well. It's still going to be a year or two in the making, but it's going to be an optics course, whether it's a rifle or a handgun.
Okay.
30 years ago, if you would have said, well, the police are going to have patrol rifles in a lot of cars, but at least available to them, and an optic, and their handguns will have optics, I would have laughed and said, you're smoking crack. No, that's where we're at. It's there. And, it has been a great help to law enforcement.
Yeah.
It does make, particularly the handgun shooting, the accuracy far better, particularly with the young officers as well as the older officers. I've got optics on a lot of my handguns now.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would see that day, but it's here.
Well, it's funny, Glenn, right? Because if you think back to the 90s, when we first started kind of putting red dots on rifles, there was all this argument. Oh, it's going to be slower. Oh, batteries. Oh, this. Oh, come up with whatever excuse you want.
Yep.
It's funny because now that's the standard.
Yep, absolutely.
You don't have a patrol rifle without an optic on it. But the same argument for putting a dot or an optic on a pistol is right back. They're arguing the same point. It's like, we've already argued this point.
Yeah.
It's proven. Yeah. It's a better solution.
Is there different training? Absolutely.
Yes.
Is there different maintenance? Yes. Some of the optics come with I'll call it a solar panel, but it gathers light, and they have a battery backup. That's great. But even those that don't, you got to check the battery too.
But the solar panels, here's what we've found. We're not a super fan of them because we were running an instructor course. Before lunchtime, we had 2 out of the 4 officers that were running those solar panel optics. They had broke them just by mere handgun manipulation. The culprit, metal wedding band, working the slide there. That metal wedding band hit that solar panel, cracked it, and in turn it was a enclosed optic. So now he's got a snow globe with the intermitting optic, right?
Good analogy.
Yeah.
So, but that's what it was, because I was like, really? What's going on? So I actually shot a couple rounds, and that's what it is. All this debris was inside that optic housing.
Yeah, I have not personally seen that or encountered it, but I can see where, clearly it's happened.
Yeah.
And, of course, manufacturers, big kudos to the companies out there manufacturing these, because they've come a long way in a short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
And at NRA headquarters, which were located in Virginia as a suburb of Washington, D.C., When you get into the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act and retired officers being able to carry concealed nationwide, the way the law is written, you can either go back to your agency to get your qualification that's required, good for a year, or in the state in which you live. If the state in which you live recognizes a certain, and in our case, Virginia recognizes NRA law enforcement certification for firearm training, we can administer the retired officer qual.
I was going to ask you that because is there a list of states? Because everybody's always asking me, because now I'm retired LEO as well. People want to know that if I can do it, if they can go to their counselor or whatever. Is there a list out there that NRA puts together?
We do not, because it changes so fast, but the law requires that if you are a law enforcement firearm instructor, you cannot be a civilian instructor, but if you're a law enforcement firearm instructor recognized by the state in which you live to conduct active duty qualifications, then you can qualify a retiree.
Gotcha.
And since Virginia recognizes us, the NRA, again, it strongly backs the blue. We offer twice a month, 3 relays each day for retired officers to come to the range at headquarters, and we conduct the state course of fire, which is required by the federal law, and have a card that we issue them if they qualify. And we do it free of charge as a thank you for your service.
Understood.
And so we provide that, again, free of charge. It's a thank you, but it is so greatly appreciated, just what you mentioned.
Yeah.
So hard to find some people.
It is.
Everyone's scared of the law. Oh, my God, the liability. There is no liability.
Right.
You're fulfilling a requirement of the federal law. You're giving a test. You're proctoring a test as an instructor. And that's what we do. We run the state course. We're a proctor. We do not do training. When you start to get into training, now you're in a gray area. You just administer the test. But I come full circle back around. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, we might see an optic in the group of retirees. Now they're almost all optics.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as we get a little more experience, seasoned,
yes,
our eyes like to fade
well
on us.
seasoned.
Yes. Yeah.
So, the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act could be an entire podcast on its own.
Yeah.
I am giving presentations on that here, but it's a very simple law that everyone manages to confuse.
Well,
and
they don't make it easy on. They don't do themselves any justice. The states, because a lot of these NRA instructors are allowed to administer the CCW compliance and all that other stuff, but they can't run a simple test for someone who's not an active LEO anymore. So there's all that confusion, but you bring it up perfectly. It's just a little confusing.
Yep, and again, the law itself, the last update was 2013, signed in by Obama, and it really cleared things up nicely. There's a pending amendment by Representative Bacon out of Nebraska. I believe it's H.R. 2243 is currently filed. A previous exact same version of this passed in the last Congress in the House but died in the Senate. So now this is up in the House again. I'm very comfortable it will pass. Has to go to the Senate. This time in the Senate, Senator John Kennedy out of Louisiana is pushing it.
Okay.
So that looks very, very, very hopeful that it will pass. A lot of great nuances that correct gray areas and problems. Again, this could be a whole separate podcast on LEOSA. But the big takeaway from LEOSA is there's only 2 things required. Photo ID from the agency you retired from and proof of qualification. Your agency isn't giving you the authority to carry a concealed firearm nationwide. The Congress did that.
Right.
They can either give you the ID or not. They can either qualify you or not. And if they won't qualify you, you can get it through the state. So it really boils down to being simple.
Right.
And when is that expected to go to the House? Do you know?
It's been filed in the House, again, H.R. 2243. It'll probably go through Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee first.
Okay.
And last time, I understand it went through the committee and came out unscathed and then passed the full House immediately thereafter.
Yeah.
So we don't do politics in the Law Enforcement Division, but we do have a political branch within the NRA, ILA, the Institute for Legislative Action. And I'm able to keep up with things through them. And like I said, it surprised us that it moved so fast through the House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had been languishing there for many, many sessions of Congress. It was never even brought out of the closet to go to a committee.
Wow.
Yeah.
we know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like a no-brainer now.
Yeah. And this is where, the viewer listener out there needs to get involved. Call your elected officials. Let them know, hey, get this thing ramped up.
Yep.
Let's give our retired officers that little more protection out there.
Yeah.
And just support them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, don't take it as if, well, why should a retired officer have available to him nationwide concealed carry if I, as a good citizen, don't? Look at it as there's one more person on the street that may save your life.
Absolutely.
Who's got 25, 30, 35 years of training and experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if a terrorist does show up, they may well be the one that deals with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, we appreciate it. We know you're busy. You're doing a bunch of talks and giving some seminars and stuff here. I hope you had a great week, and we really appreciate you coming here.
I'm very, very
Fantastic.
happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And if anyone wants any information, le.nra.org. That's le.nra.org is our law enforcement division website.
Perfect.
Yeah, appreciate it, Glenn. We definitely need to get you back on, and let's talk some Leosa stuff. I think let's get that boat cleared up because it's very muddy right now. So appreciate the time.
Yes, sir.
For the viewer listener out there, guys, as always, train hard, stay safe, and we'll see you on the range.
Roger that.